Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost, and this is Fridays. So it's the TRU Community Gathering every Friday since April 17th, 2020. This is 147, I think. We started doing these just to keep the community as a community when we all went into isolation because of you know what. You know what it is. I don't have to say it. And we we open the Zoom room so that people can come in on Friday and feel like they were part of a community and talk about what they're going through and talk about what they're doing. And the conversations for the first year, year and a half, were really about COVID and dealing with COVID and making adjustments to what we normally would do in live performance and embracing Zoom and embracing virtual and all that sort of stuff. And now we're back in what resembles, doggone it, it really resembles the normal world. Um, Underneath the surface, we know that COVID is still there, it's lurking. I still tell people that it really makes sense to be careful still. Not just for yourself, because a lot of you may feel that you're not vulnerable to COVID, but people around you may be, and you never know. Um, Count me among them. I've had COVID 3 times. So I really urge people to be cautious and careful and considerate of other people. It's a big planet. We got to live here together. So we've talked about all sorts of different things, and of course, this month, March, has been Women's Awareness Month, and so of course I've been focusing on women producers. I focus on women producers anyway. I mean, most of the producers that I'm friendly with are actually women. So it's no big news to me that women are producers. We've talked about challenges that women have as producers in a business that can become at times a boys' club, um, and I'm not going to assume that that's the case for my 3 guests today, but most women that I've talked to who are in the business say, yeah, they come up against it every now and then. Uh, Today, it's a very specific conversation, though. Um, Today, it's about actresses who have turned to producing, and I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to bring my 3 friends in, and we're going to talk about what it was like being an actress, what it's like being a producer, and why the switch, and what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, how do you do it? I call this a how-to guide because I'm going to actually push for some specifics about how the transition worked for my 3 guests. Um, doesn't have to be earth-shattering, but just so people know that they can make the transition, that there are reasons why producing is attractive and why it's also it's a useful skill. I will say before I bring them on that we always tell everybody in the business, actors, directors, and writers, that understanding the business makes you a much better person, a much better professional in a business. It's a complicated business, and producers like to work with people who know what the business is about. So learning producer skills for everybody is highly recommended. And with that, I'm going to bring in um, Stephanie Rosenberg, Cady Huffman, and Paige Price. Stephanie, who is on my board of directors these days. Cady Huffman, who's working right now with our TRU Gala. She's producing 2 of the pieces in our TRU Gala. And Paige Price, who I just have known for years, and I'm so happy to have you. I don't know if we've ever said hello, but I'm going to start with you since I don't know you. Hi, Paige.
Hi, how are you? Hi,
I'm
everybody.
fine. So, tell us a little bit about your background as an actress. Let's start with the acting.
Yes, I started when I was one of those dancer girls at 4. Did all the things and got into shows, and just went to college, went to NYU for about 10 minutes before I started working, and then I didn't finish, in fact, which plagues me sometimes. But I just had a different path, and it was a different era then as an actor. You could be scrappy and resourceful, and it was easier to find housing. It felt hard, but when I look at what the actors are up against now, it's a different world. They also come out with much more debt and much more specialized training, and I think that the the field it feels more crowded. But it felt like I'm old enough now to call it the golden days of yore. So I got to do all the things. I got to be poor. I got to question my life choices. I got to figure out where to live. I lived in Los Angeles for a time. I toured Europe for a time. But I mean, I wouldn't trade any of it. I wouldn't trade any of it. All of it collectively gave me the kind of experience that made me understand that I wanted to be in the field forever. And I was one of those actresses who was always interested in what everybody's job was and how much does that cost and how do you schedule a tour? Why are we going from Appleton to North Carolina and then back to Chicago? Why? All those things that that they generally don't talk to the actors about. And then I got involved in sort of leadership positions, from being deputy to ultimately serving for 18 years. Okay, sorry. For 18 years as the vice president of Actors Equity. And it is there actually that I think I learned the most about leadership and about the nuts and bolts of the business, including contracts. And in my position, I worked with the production contract, which is the Broadway contract. I did all the negotiations for that for nearly 20 years. And really that's where I learned how to get consensus and how to talk about issues with many different concerns represented in the room. And so it was
I thank you for that, because not only are you talking about your specific experience and your specific path, but you're also telling us why it's important. And I think that what I'm hoping others in the room will be thinking is, how am I acquiring these pieces of knowledge? How am I acquiring these things? And actually, you might even be asking yourself if you're even as curious as Paige was. I mean, I give you a lot of credit, Paige, because I mean, a lot of us, writers or actors, we all hide against, we all hide behind the old, oh, I'm an artist. I don't have to know about business, do I? And I try to discourage people from hiding behind that. It doesn't really serve anybody very well. I'm gonna move to my board member, Stephanie. Stephanie, I never knew you as an actress, although now I know you as an actress. Now that you're producing, now that I know as you're a producer, I'm also knowing you as an actress. But I always thought of you as a producer from when I first met you. So how did that happen?
Oh, bingo. I'm an actress now. Haha. That's the whole trick. Yes, but no. How did it happen? Okay, so very much like Paige, I had started as a dancer when I was young. 16, I had a serious injury that took me out of the professional ballet track, which is what I thought I was going to do with my life. And then thought, well, I was known I danced with the National Ballet School of New Jersey, and I was part of a company member, and I was known there for being like somebody who was filled with emotion, and I was very much known for my acting and dance. So I thought, all right, let me go pursue this acting thing. I was doing chorus at school anyway, and so I just threw myself into it like full force, and went to college for it, have a BFA in theater from Adelphi University. After Adelphi, I wanted more training, and I went on to the Neighborhood Playhouse School of Theater, and I'm a graduate of their 2-year program, which is pretty big deal because it is a cut program. They only invite 1/3 of the students from the first year to the second year. So you sit there in class your first year and you're like, out of the 3 of us, only one of us is moving forward. Hunger Games, acting style. So I graduated that program. I went and apprenticed up at Williamstown and did that. And then I was starting to get cast in a bunch of places. Now, Williamstown was really where the turning point came into, where eventually I'd be a Broadway producer. I'd say before that in college, my BFA program was very about being collaborative and knowing all of the departments. Even though I was getting a BFA in acting, we had to do so many weeks in each technical department on different crews just to understand other people's jobs, because we were beat into our heads that theater is a collaborative art form. And I really do believe that. And I still carry that banner, and Nick Petron would be so happy, I hope, to hear that I still trumpet. Theater is a collaborative art form. We all have to like know how to work together nicely in the sandbox.
But the thing that's interesting to me is, at least in my experiences, I've observed it. People don't always include producers as part of the collaboration.
Yeah, I didn't get that in college. College did not offer producing as part of it. I spent time in every other technical department. But when I got at Williamstown, I met one of those people, one of those perfect people. Do you know, like one of those cool kids who like always looks perfect and knew all of the right people and had all of the right friends and kind of knew where to go to hang out? I met one of those girls and she befriended me, and I was so thrilled because I had never been a cool kid before in my life. See, you get it. You're laughing because you get this. And we got back to New York and we were going to open calls together and auditions together. And one day she turned to me with a hair toss blowing somehow magically in the wind when there was no wind, and said to me, Stephanie, I'm going to CTI's 3-day workshop because I'm not going to be a poor actor for the rest of my life. And so I, with a hair toss, said, I'm going to go keep you company. That is how I got to my very first course on producing. And I just thought, as an actor, I was like, okay, if I can understand what people on the other side of the table are looking for, I can get better at auditioning, and maybe I'll meet some of these people and they'll need a 5, 6.5 mezzo soprano brunette. By the way, if any of you still need a 5, 6.5 mezzo soprano brunette, and it would be great. So I went and I networked and I met a ton of people, and that was like a turning point that I wouldn't know it then. I would not know it from that 3-day workshop over at New World Stages. It wouldn't be until years later that I actually put that stuff into use at all. But that was like the very first, step that would eventually.
Okay, so we've gotten that far. We're going to have a little suspense. We're going to continue both stories, but we're going to move to Cady Huffman. I'm working with Cady right now on our benefit, and I am so impressed at how you departmentalize between the creative and the business. When you're doing business, you're very business minded. And so let's go back to your career as an actress, because I think a lot of people know a lot of the things that you've done.
Sure. I mean, all I can think about is producing my cousins in petticoats in our living room. That's my first producing experience. Yeah. But I started studying acting at 6, ballet at 7, opera at 9.
I didn't pick 3 people who I thought all started with ballet. I didn't do that intentionally.
Yeah, I tell you, ballet is truly my first love. That was where, I saw 3 children sing it last night in a ramshackle little recital, and I still cried. It's just like, that's where, and the chaos at home went away, and I got to go to the ballet studio, and these teachers allowed me to be the serious person that I am. And they called me Ethel because I was a little bit of a loud talker in ballet class. But I really loved ballet, and I loved singing opera as well. And we, for fun, my crazy family read Shakespeare for fun. It's like, that's just how my loony bin people were. So I just studied real hard. And for some reason, I grew up in Santa Barbara, California. At the moment when there was something in the water, a lot of us went on to be professionals. I went straight to work as soon as I possibly could at 18. I went to Broadway with La Cage. I was a teenage drag queen in La Cage. And then I did Bob Fosse's last show. And I made commercials. And then I got cast in the Will Rogers Follies, nominated for a Tony Award, got married, nothing happened, came back, stood by for 2 people in Steel Pier, and then got cast to be one of the beautiful, gorgeous Edna-ettes in Dame Edna's royal tour. And while there, I sat there with my friend, Amy Turner, who did the Will Rogers Follies with me as well. And she wanted to become a director and wanted to know if I knew female writers. I suggested Teresa Rebeck. She found a play she liked called Sunday on the Rocks. The 2 of us sort of what would happen if we wanted to make this a film? So we pretended to make a film, which turned into making a film. And that's where I learned how to produce, as in like the whole spectrum. And that is, Amy as well. We just love all of it. We want to know what everybody does. And I like being a team leader and allowing everybody to do their best at what they do. So that's what excited me about producing. And then that same year, because literally I said, I got to get out of this freaking acting business. It's just like crap. So I'm going to be a producer. So I shot that freaking film in October 2000. And by May 2000, I'd won a Tony Award for 2001. I'd won a Tony Award for the producers. So there went that plan, like the carrot had been dangled and then ripped away and the other carrot came in. So I went back into the acting thing. And since then, I've always, producing something large like a feature film and doing all the jobs, it makes you a little bit fearless. Like there's literally books you can read about this if you need to learn more. There's literally people you talk to at Screen Actors Guild or at Actors Equity who will send you what you need. And, reading, that's how I grew up. My grandparents, neither of them went past the 8th grade. They were book learned. They taught us to, if you want to learn something, you open a book and you read about it. So, I do definitely have to separate my brain into, creative brain and producing brain. And I like that. Like, I think it gives the other side a little bit of a break for a bit, it's that acting side. More and more you realize, well, this is why we're called the kids. It's like you got to wrangle those kids and you have to give them the opportunity to be open and creative, within their chaos. I need to be the one that allows them to experiment and do it without, losing my mind too much. But anyway, that's basically my journey.
So we've kind of ended on all three of you with the turning point, although there wasn't really one turning point. It was a series of choices. I guess my next question to all three of you is, what is it that you find fulfilling about acting, and what is it that you've started realizing you were getting out of producing that you weren't necessarily getting out of acting, and winning Tonys? Anybody want to start that? Let's start with Paige again, because I'll just be organized and do it in the same order I did it before.
I mean, I finally, my turning point actually came as a becoming an artistic director first. I was doing an acting job and the company was looking for an artistic director. And I said, I know everybody. Who do you want? What do you want? And ultimately I got hired as the short story to do that. And when they offered me the job, I was like, I don't know how to do that. But I also
I'm glad you said that, because I remembered now that one of the things that I was so interested about you was the fact that you were so much engaged in the not-for-profit world, which I don't think, Stephanie, are you and Cady, do you get involved with not-for-profit or mostly commercial?
Non-for-profit productions?
Yeah,
or
not really. I mean, you haven't really been connected
arts
with any.
admin.
I did it at the very beginning of my career.
I can't say that I've ever profited from it.
I did at the very beginning of my career, Bob, but like let Paige tell her story, then I'll tell that one.
Okay.
But like I did at the very beginning of my producing career.
Yeah, Paige is very impressive. I mean, you've been with some terrific companies, and you've done what reads on the websites as being really solid work at helping these companies.
Well, mostly, yeah. First, it was really an accident. Truly, it just fell in my lap. But I do believe you create your own opportunities, and I believe that for me, it was just about saying yes to just about everything. Yes always got me to the next thing, or it got me to like I never want to do that again. But it was a forward moving thing. And so that company turned out to be in desperate straits. And then I didn't know why they were hiring me, but I knew that if I needed to know anything, I could crack a book like Cady, or I could just call somebody. I mean, the networks are real in our field. And like I said, Equity really prepared me for understanding many of the things about how theater functions.
You just
So
got
that was really fun.
you just got a shout out for your production of Scottsboro Boys at Philadelphia Theater Company.
I will say that was before my time. So
Oh.
props to Sarah Goronzik for that. But the short story is I spent 10 years in Aspen, Colorado, turning around that company. And, you know, it was basically it was a theater that had a couple equity contracts every summer. And by the time I left, it had 28 contracts and a rep company and a new work program and an apprentice program and 3 times the budget and a bigger staff. And it was loads of fun learning how to do that. And I had a great playground to do that in. In Philly, as David knows, Philly was in really dire straits. So that was another turnaround. Somehow I've become a turnaround person and an organizational fixer, which I think speaks to what really gets me excited, which is solving problems. So that's what I loved the most was rehearsals. I loved being in rehearsals and I loved being in those communities of people trying to get to opening. And that's what I love about being a director. And that's really what I love about being a producer. So I think that, you know, if I had to distill, like, that curiosity turned into, you know, I never met a problem I didn't want to solve, even if it's somebody else's. You know, somebody says, oh, I just lost an actor. I'm like, where do they need to be? You know, it's a little OCD. But so I think that is really what I love to do, is solve problems.
I think that's a great point, by the way, because, you know, one of the basic questions we always ask is, what is a producer? And I think that one very solid answer is really a producer is somebody who solves the problems. Because, I mean, that's where the buck stops. It's the producer has to solve things. And I actually like that too. I like problem solving. That's another reason why I've also produced, and I like doing that. So I don't want to stop your flow. So you basically were going through Philadelphia Theater Company, and when did you start thinking about going into commercial producing?
When I was at Equity, and because of the collective bargaining sessions that I went through with the Broadway producers and the produced theater owners and the league, I had a lot of relationships from that time. And so actually before, when I was still performing, in fact, the head of the league at that time, Jed Bernstein, asked me to help them produce an event in Times Square, but it was going to take place near the Tonys, and the bandwidth of the league was very stretched, but I had respect on both sides, and could I help pull together talent? And so I learned how to produce with events in New York City. So we did Broadway Under the Stars several times in Bryant Park. It was a free concert with a full orchestra, and, you know, talent from Cheetah Rivera to Bebe Neuwirth to Jane Krakowski. And it was such a glorious place to learn, because the people that did it and the people that came to see it were just the biggest Broadway fans ever. And we ultimately televised it, and so I learned a little bit about that. I learned about how to raise sponsorship money, and then we were having a meeting about that one morning. For the very first one, we were interviewing directors in the morning at the Edison Hotel. Missed that coffee shop, and that morning turned out to be 9/11. And during that breakfast, we found out what happened. So I actually spent the day in the league offices, like being a fly on the wall, because and what we pivoted to doing was actually sending out a tour of America called New York Loves America, which went to these iconic cities and gave away a trip to New York and a Broadway package. And so at a time when a lot of the artists like myself were feeling like, how do I contribute to society right now? What I do is so trivial, which is, I don't believe that, but in that moment, I remember a lot of us felt like that on Broadway. It was just like we were lost. And so it was a way of taking what we do and exporting it to places where you could have an impact. And so that was a seminal moment for me, because it did take me back to the importance of what we do and how we do it and who we do it with. And so, the road is always sort of full of zigs and zags, but ultimately that was one of the reasons I came back to Philly, because I Aspen was this bubble of, you know, possibility, and Philly had, you know, real problems in the community, and you know, it just felt like a deeper place to try to do work and to try to have impact. So thank you, David, for your kind words.
Have you actually pursued, I guess, not executive producing, a lead producing? Have you actually led any productions, like with finding properties and doing the whole thing from the start. Can tell us a little bit about some of those or one of those.
I have a project.
And also the other question everybody is going to have in the room is what interests you? What are the things that interest you as a producer?
I'll answer the second question second. First, the only thing I was working on as a lead producer, we just did a 4-week workshop of a new musical called Hearts Beat Loud. And that's the only thing I haven't done under the auspices of a nonprofit, like that I was running. And so that is based on a 2018 really small indie film. I think I even pitched Stephanie to come. And it's a great new musical. Was very excited about it. And so we just finished a 4-week workshop about 6 weeks ago and with MCC. And it was I don't know what else to say, but yeah, except we're pushing it through, and we just finished the developmental raise, and now we're moving on to a potential enhancement project for that.
Well, I'm gonna
yes, Cady.
Let's go to Cady. Cady, what are the things that interest you, and what is it that you think people need to know? What makes a good producer? That's another easy question, an easy lob.
Well, personally, for me, like Paige, who really has been one of my heroes for so many years, knowing what she did for our union and really making that transition, because we were kind of contemporaries in the dance world, and I was like, how the heck is she doing all that? But she did it. So it's somebody who, for me, I always lead with, I try to lead with love, with respect, with really, really, really the person who wants everyone to be their best. That's how I approach it. I love meeting young people, old people, people experienced, inexperienced, who are really passionate about what they do and allowing them to do it. I don't want to do all the jobs. I want to see you excel at all the jobs. And that's what I think a producer does. Everybody falls underneath their umbrella, and because I've done all the jobs, I can also provide some guidance in doing those jobs. And I realized, looking back, my producing has included events in New York, my own personal one-woman shows. I'm developing not just television, but also I have a theater piece that I'm developing, and it is a musical. And it's sort of just, for me, understanding that I can do this. I can be an actor. I can be a producer. I can be a director. And I have varying degrees of success in each. But yeah, being a producer for me that's what it means. Bringing like as much heart as I can and allowing people to be their best.
Stephanie, how about you? All of the above questions, because there's like about three different questions that are on the table right now. But
which question first, Bob? Tell me which one you want me to answer first.
I think the easiest one to go to is what is it that you think makes a good producer, and why did you decide to do that? You also have been a lead. I know you're a lead producer with developing new work, so we should also talk about that a little bit and what you bring to that as an actress.
Sure. Okay, so repeat the question, because my brain just spun so fast I lost it, Bob.
I have to decide which one I'm going to go with. Let's start with you as a lead producer. How do you find the works that you're interested in, and what is it that you bring to producing that is unique to you or unique to maybe women? What the other thing to think about is there a difference between men producers and women producers? I think there is, but you may not agree.
I feel like that's a loaded question. I don't want my guy producer friends to not want to work with me after that.
Well, okay, let me just set the stage for that. Basically, I've talked to a lot of producers, a lot of experienced producers who've been around for like 30, 40 years, women who have said that it was difficult breaking into the boys' club. Yes. So let's just acknowledge that to one degree or another, there has been a boys' club. And to one degree or another, there may still be one. So let's do that as just accept that. It's not your opinion. It's just an observation. All right.
All right, so being a lead producer, how do I find works? I'm going to just start there and I guess answer your questions as best I can, Bob, because it was a lot. I'll try and
I know.
answer them all. Tell me if I miss one, okay? Because I do want to answer them all.
You think I'll remember?
Or at least you'll think of another good one while I'm talking.
Okay, I'll do that.
I find works in a variety of ways. You know, I'm working on stuff that I've written, and I work on stuff that I've found, and sometimes that's something people have submitted to me. I've worked with people that I've met because of the speed date. You know, I've worked with people.
No, to those who don't know, we do a program called the Writer Producer Speed Date, and 22 writers get to pitch to 11 commercial producers on a Sunday, and it's very cool and it's fun.
How else have I worked? And I've worked with people who've been recommended through other people. I've literally had someone be like, "Hey, my friend wrote this. You should take a look at it." And I usually do. It takes me a long time to look at stuff, unless there's some reason there's a hurry. Like I looked at somebody's stuff immediately because they happened to be unwell, and she was really interested if her piece had any forward momentum while she was still with us. And so I looked at that very quickly because she was unwell. But you know, it could take me 6 months to get back to you if you just do a blind submission to my inbox. And if I don't get back to you, don't have your feelings hurt. It's just I'm busy with other productions and I didn't get a chance to look at it yet. Because I'll often at least send at least some sort of feedback like, "Hey, I think this and this was great about the piece. It's not right for me. Please keep going." Or "This might be right for other people I know." If I meet people who pitch me and I'm not the right producer, because I'm not always the right producer, I will happily connect you to someone I know if I know someone who's right for your piece. Like I have a producer friend who's also a director and she loves memory pieces. And so whenever someone comes to me with a memory piece, toss the ball to her right away because that's her jam, you know? I love pieces that have happy endings. And if they don't have happy endings, you still find some way to have us leaving the theater smiling, mainly because if I personally am going to spend over $200 on a ticket, I want to walk out of that theater happier than I walked in. I don't want to pay that money to be upset all night. It's just a personal preference. It's okay if you feel differently. Dramatic work has its place. It's just not my favorite thing all the time. Sometimes a good version of R&J is amazing, but you know, not every night. I
want to steer to another, because something that you said made me realize that there's a question I should be asking. Let's talk about the different kinds of producing there are. You basically have developed new work, and you've held people's hands, and you've created works. You've also done pieces that you've developed for your own talent, so that you can be in them. And I think that's true. I know it's true of Cady. I don't know if it's true of Paige or not. I don't know if you've ever produced something that you yourself had planned to be in.
I did a one-woman show called The X-Files playback.
X-Files, I can see that already. Yeah, okay, got it. So, and then the third thing that you've been involved with some Broadway shows, and that's a different kind of producing. That's a different thing. So can you kind of disambiguate the kinds of producing that you've been involved in?
Oh my goodness. All right, that's a big question, and I feel like I will give a very short answer on that, and this is why you should come to PDMP because I feel like they're going to spend a lot of time on that. So I will plug PDMP on that.
That's our development program for producers here at Theater Resources Unlimited. And those of you who are in the chat who asked about CTI is closed, and we're not sure if it's going to open again or not. But we provide similar programs here at TRU. So the producer training that you might once have gotten at CTI, you can get something comparable with what we do. So I'll say go back to what you were saying. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So when I've been producing on Broadway, most of the time it's in the aspect of a co-producer. A lot of people go, "Well, what does a co-producer do?" Besides either write a check or raise money. And I think that the best lead producers use their co-producers almost in the similar way to a BOD, where they actually want input and they want to know how you can be supportive and they want to know how you're going to help. And then there's some lead producers who are just like, "Thank you, you've raised your money and we will let you know updates as is needed." And it really depends on who the lead producer is and how they set the tone for their production. Because, you know, for those of you that are not familiar with producing at the commercial level, you know, the best way to think about it is the lead producer is like the CEO, and the co-producers are the BOD is the best way, I think, to try and get a sense of it.
Board of directors, everybody.
Board of directors.
It's
sorry.
not that they have great bods. It's board of directors.
Oh, maybe we have great bods. If that came with the job, I think I'd do a lot more co-producing. So yeah, so that's commercial co-producing. And as far as creating stuff that's for myself, yeah, I've created stuff that's for myself, but they've always been pieces that I could step out of. Like, for example, my Easter show that's running right now, the Easter Bunny Hop, which is a theater for young audiences piece, a TYA piece. We're running in New York, we're running in LA, and we're going to be running in Florida before Easter. I created it originally for me to play the lead female character, but of course, like, as I got it up in New York, I had to cast other people in it, because then I had to go and get it up in LA. And I was going to come back and play it in New York, but due to some family issues, I'm not going to be able to play it in New York. And I still have two amazing actresses who are going to do it while I'm here. And it's thrilling and exciting, and also, like, I'm sad because I miss doing the part, but also great to know that I've created something that can survive without me in it. And it's going to keep thrilling people. So,
And
yeah.
that's actually a great conversation to talk about one person shows as well. People who create shows for themselves to perform. I always wonder, do you ever consider what it would be like if you stepped away from your own piece and let somebody else perform it? I'll ask Paige about that. The X-Files, one woman show that you did. Is it only you, or does it exist as a piece that could be done by someone else?
You know, I never thought about it. I did it sort of as a lark, but it was basically stories about a story about being a cockeyed optimist, I think is how I would put it, you know, and how I just kept going back. And it was about dating. It was literally about my exes, and I named them, so you would know who they were. And it was super fun. It ended up being on the View, because they were wondering if I could get in trouble with some of the exes that were featured in the show. But
And
yeah.
to date, no, you haven't. God.
No.
Okay.
Some of them were mad that they weren't included, in fact. But I actually tried to spin that out into a series, you know, a la Seinfeld a little bit, where, you know, you tell one of the stories and it bleeds into a 30-minute sort of Sex in the City kind of vibe. But and I almost had a deal at Oxygen, but it didn't happen. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, when you are a creative person, you will find ways of staying creative. And even, you know, if you're in a long running show, as Cady, you know, whoever, you'll produce the BCEFA concert, you know, I think there's a common thread where, like, we just don't sit back and let things happen to us. We have to keep making things happen.
Cady, I'm going to turn to you, because I know that you produced Sunday on the Rocks and also Cady Did, the web series, as vehicles for yourself as an actress. Tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, a little bit about Sunday on the Rocks, which was really such a joy to do. But truly my plan was to stop being an actor. That didn't pan out.
Yeah, because you were in the movie.
Well, I was in the movie, as was Amy and Suzanne Douglas and Julie White. We were the four women in this movie. And it really is, you know, we shot it on film, for one thing. You know, this was pre-digital. So we had to count feet of film and shoot a feature film in 9 days, where really the 9th day was about 24 hours. But, you know, we finished it. And it took about 2-3 years of post, because we'd have to sneak into an editing bay, you know, with our editor and edit what we could. And, you know, very guerrilla filmmaking. And then back then you had to have a 35mm print made and then send that to festivals. So I still have these big cases of this film. And the film I've gone back and looked at it, has quite a bit of merit. So I'm looking now, well, shit, that's a commodity. I own that. Can that go on to one of these particularly, you know, Broadway focused platforms these days? And I also want to start a film festival, though it seems overwhelming, for theater pieces put on film. You know, so plays like
I'll sign on to that.
Yeah, like I think that there's a real market for it. And I think there's room in the film festival world for it. So I love character driven pieces. Cady Did came about because I was on another web series and we ended up winning I ended up winning an award for it, an indie series award. And the creator of that, we went to lunch. I said, well, what would you write for me if it was just me? And so we started pretending to make a web series. And then we ended up making a web series. And that web series ended up winning several indie series awards. And it was a vehicle for me. Cady Did, but really I did produce it. With my friend Jason, I tend to have Jason Chichi. I tend to have partners when I produce. That's my comfort level. I don't tend to be out there all by myself. And we tend to have very different strengths when I am producing with somebody else, which is great because we can really cover a vast swath of what we need. Yeah, so those were vehicles for me, but I tell you the thing I like best is post-production and who I hire to be in it with me. Like I just am so tickled pink with my co-stars, getting those people to do it and giving them the freedom to be who they are. That's what excites me about it. It's nice that I'm on that my name holds a little bit of clout, that somebody thinks they want to make a web series, but really it's the whole thing that excites me. What was your question?
I think you answered many questions there. That was great. I have so many things that I want to talk about, but we have questions in the room. So, Owen, could you be the voice of God and direct us to
Yes,
questions?
of course. Absolutely. You don't need to ask me twice. We have a question from Sherry Friedman. What is the CTI course that Stephanie took?
So the CTI course I took, that stands for Commercial Theater Institute. Like Bob said, right now they're shuttered. We don't know if they'll come back. They were almost an extension of the league. I don't know quite how they were affiliated with the league or not, but it used to take place like in the league building.
It was TDF and the league both sponsored CTI.
The 3-day workshop when I took it back in the day was actually at New World Stages, and I think it was actually very early on in them doing the 3-day workshop, and it was like drinking from a fire hose. It was just like so much information in 3 days, like your head would spin, but it was really great to be inundated.
I just want you to know, Stephanie, that you were way too young to have been in the early days of CTI.
Oh, really?
Fred Vogel found that like in the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, I thought it was early for them doing the 3-day because it was like it was just like it seemed like they were still figuring out programming a little bit, but maybe it was a year they were experimenting with programming because there was like a lot of law.
Well, let's put it this way. TRU has been around for 30 years. Fred Vogel was my guest at our first meeting.
Yeah, okay, way before me. I'm embarrassed. I should know that. So sorry.
I just didn't want you to falsely age yourself. It's like, no, you're too young for that.
Vampire, that's all.
Okay.
No, it seemed like that year they were maybe expanding and playing with programming because it was a lot, or maybe I was just too new to it. It just seemed like an overwhelming amount of info.
It is. It's a weekend intensive, 3 days, and it is an intensive. You just pours information and more information all over you for like 2.5 days. It's a lot. It's a lot. I've heard people this for a lot, but it also gave people a very good basic understanding of the range of things that you need to know to be a producer. So we do that now in I think it's a 3 or 4 month period. Next question.
Next question from Scott Sublett. Cady, what books do you like? I like learning from books.
I shot that film so long ago. It was literally something like how to produce a film. It seems like Jon Favreau had something to do with it. Like Swingers was what they used as the example, but I don't remember the exact title. And I tend to be a cleaner, so I sort of scan and then go, okay, I got that, and then I go do it. Mostly it is talking to the unions and the different people that you need, and networking with DPs and line producers and ADs, and finding everybody. You put the team together because people know each other, and we know each other's strengths. So I would say there's literally a book called How to Write a Screenplay, and my friend Steven read it, and now he's a millionaire and makes screenplays. He makes movies. So there's so many books out there. I recommend reading them and not taking any one of them as the Bible unless it really works for you. But there's so many good ideas out there. Listen to everybody and take what works for you and leave the rest.
I noticed, Owen, that there's a question from Emma that I'm not sure whether we completely answered. Did all three of you talk about how you find projects and what you're looking for in terms of new projects that you might want to be involved in? She also was asking,
I don't think I answered that.
Yeah,
but I think I mostly write them.
I
have not been I mostly write them, and then I have not been somebody who's sought out to produce somebody else's thing yet.
Then you are part of the SPA, self-producing artists.
That's me.
So have a SPA.
I'll take the next one.
Okay.
And I'll tie this in with what kind of material attracts me, because that was one of the other questions. I got a lot of experience at weighing new material as an artistic director. You really sort of hone your skills for intake and how much and what you need and gleaning. So I always used to joke, don't send me anything with an exclamation point at the end, because I'm not interested in a lot of the spoof parodies. That's not for me. I like things that make me laugh and cry. I like things that deal with people's struggles with faith. I'm sort of really attracted to stories about faith, losing it, getting it back. I love stories about redemption. That's not always a happy ending, Stephanie, but it does speak to like a really satisfying transformational journey. And my tastes are very eclectic, but I tend to not. Sophomoric stuff is stuff I like to watch with an edible, but I really like serious stuff. When I'm gonna spend years of my time on it, I like stuff that has a message in it, or that's really touching. I do really like something that has a really solid story. I love stories about girlfriends, and women relationships and mothers, and one of my personal missions was gender parity. Back in the day when I first started working, I didn't have a mentor when I was growing up, and I always wanted to be a mentor as I was able to learn things and realize how many people just need you to listen to them and just return an email, for God's sakes. So I always tell artistic directors or producers, just find the time. It will take 6 months sometimes, but just say, I got it, and I'll get back to you eventually. David Kurkowski knows this. It takes me a long time, but eventually I will get back to you. So I find things through recommendations. I go to a ton of readings. But during the time I was an artistic director, I got to know a million writers and a million composers and their agents. And I have really good relationships with some agents that I could reach out to and say, what do you got? What I like. I'm in a transition now out of nonprofit. So I have to be really careful with my bandwidth and what I can promise as I continue to learn. I'm a new commercial producer, and so I don't want to overpromise, and I want to make sure I stay humble and align myself and partner. I don't like to work by myself either. I like to have partners that show me things I just couldn't have even imagined.
One question that I brought up that we really didn't address that much is theater, has theater been for you, as somebody that wants to become a producer, a boys club to any degree? Have you had any frustrations? And I know it's exactly the question you don't want to answer, but I think it's important. I think it's just important to acknowledge where we really are. I'm going to be talking about this a lot on Tuesday night. So anybody want to jump on? Not anybody. Is anybody willing to, not wanting to? Cady.
Go, Cady, go.
You're muted. You're muted.
Muted.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. I thought I muted. Yeah, I'll take it. I haven't really come up against it terribly because I haven't jumped into the big pool of, you know, commercial production yet, theater production. And I tend to make my own path, and I tend to be the little sister of two older brothers. So I'm pretty comfortable with telling anybody how I feel about what they're saying and mansplaining to me. So I can only say I've had amazing experiences as an actor. Like, remember Barry and Fritz doing La Cage, where Fritz Holt and Barry Brown were amazing lead producers and generous. And Roger Berlin, who was, you know, a legendary lead producer also, you know, they always knew how to make the company feel valued. What I find now is you know, I've never worked for Scott Rudin, so I don't know what to say about him. But there tend to be a whole lot more producers on Broadway shows now, so I'm not even sure who's who anymore. And the lead producers I know are people like, or producers are paying me like people like Jamie Leroy, or, you know, and I have friends who are getting into it now as formerly actors into producing who are women. So there may be that I'm from the old world as an actor, but the new world to me seems pretty open. If you can get the job done and raise the money, you can do this. And it's sort of just having a voice, and it's show business. If your feelings get hurt easily, show business probably isn't the business for you. You know, it's like show business is crowded. I don't cry if somebody doesn't make it in show business, because it's not that kind of business. Like, just because I'm the most talented one doesn't mean I always get the job. So yeah, that's sort of my attitude about the whole thing. If you can imagine yourself doing anything else, you should probably do that. Unfortunately, my imagination is limited. As many times as I asked God, is there something else I can do? The answer has been no.
The one specific that I can pull out of the last panel we did. I did have one or two women producers say that sometimes it got awkward when they were asking for money, and there was a tendency for some potential investors to want to talk to the guy instead of to them. So there is still something going on that we've probably come a long way, but we're probably not there yet.
Yeah.
Stephanie, you were going to say.
Yeah, I really would like to speak on this, Bob. So I've been producing on Broadway for over 10 years now. 2012, when I did my big CTI 14-week class with Rusty back in the day, I started associate producing on Gore Vidal's The Best Man. That was my first show. And I worked with a male producer in order to be able to be an associate producer on that show, and then partnered with another guy to get to work on the next show. And this was, you know, I made these amazing partnerships. But what was weird is, at the time, 10 years ago, there was not that many female producers on Broadway, especially younger female producers on Broadway. So it was quite often that some of the elder statesmen would just make the assumption, and I'm sure from their defense, quite innocently, because of what it was in the industry at the time. But the first questions I'd ask is, oh, are you the girlfriend? Are you their niece? Are you their assistant? Are you there? Before they would realize, oh, and I'd have to very nicely be like, no, I'm a producer. Oh, you are? You raised money for this? Yes, I raised money for this. Oh, okay. Hi, nice to meet you. And there's still one or two people who it's very interesting. Like I'd shoot an email to, and if I don't get a response in a day or two, I'll ask one of my guy friends to shoot an email to. Interesting how one or two of them will get back to him right away. So it's just, it's not as bad as it was, but I'm not going to say that it's gone completely away. But it is getting better.
I mean, in general, in our culture, I think that there's a transition we're going through, and we're going through a transition with a lot of areas of our culture right now. And there's just a volcanic spewing of resistance from populations in this country. It may not be as much in New York, although I think it is still here. The problem with evolution is it takes a long time. And sometimes we just have to wait it out. I mean, certainly, I don't think anybody would deny that we still are nowhere near where we need to be with equity and diversity. Perhaps we're doing a little better with women parity for women in businesses in general, but I don't think we're there yet. So Paige, give me that head shake with words. Let me hear you.
Look, there's 3 families, there's 3 men that run the theaters in New York City. There's
There you
3
go.
portals to commercial theater. You have to kiss one of those rings to get a theater to get your show up. That has not changed. There's no women in Succession places. I mean, Daryl Roth had to build her own freaking theater, but she could afford to, you know? So I think that the problem is deep. And I think that I'm going to say it, sue me, but I think that women have had to have, in this recent past of trying to reckon with societal and structural issues that were oppressive and not fair. I think women have been much more eager to step into the breach and try to share. In my opinion, it's just about sharing power, and it's about sharing opportunities. It's not about somebody else needs to get that, and so you can't have it. It's just about make more. But I also feel that that in my experience, women have taken the brunt, and that's not even the way I want to say it, but women have stepped back to allow for more, and there are a cadre of men that haven't. I'm just going to say it. In my experience, I find that women have tried to open the doors more than men, and some of the men in power have been more eager to right the wrongs at the expense of women.
Well, let's just say that we are in an age right now. We've entered this very surprising time where we have the repeal of Roe versus Wade. So we are still in a male-dominated society where the men think that they know better than anybody. And I will be one guy to say I don't know better than anybody. I need your input. I need to know what's going on in other people's hearts, not just my own. Good. I wanted to go there, and I'm glad. Thank you, Paige, because some people, sometimes people aren't comfortable going there, but I appreciate that because it's what it is. It really is what it is. I don't disagree with the thing that you just said. I feel like I see this going on, but I see it from a male perspective, so I can't risk being here mansplaining about it. So. Let's go to a couple other questions. Do you have a little bit more time, or are you tight for time? Anyone? You're okay?
Okay.
I'm a little tight for time.
You're what?
I'm a little tight for time.
Little tight for time. Okay, so and get back to the questions. I want the room to be heard.
Yeah, sure. We've got a question from Candy Carl. Question to all 3. Who is your go-to team? Does it change? Do you hold on to a certain number? And as Bob is saying, how many are men versus women on your team when you are producing?
Well, Stephanie, you have a partner who's a guy on some of your projects. I'm not sure if it's on all of them.
No, yeah. Well, right now I work a lot with Cooper Jordan of Cooper Jordan Entertainment. In the past, I've worked with other gentlemen producers. I'm happy to partner with people, especially when we have varying skill sets, and it's nice to help lighten the load because, many hands lighten the load. Do I work with the same people over and over again? Sure, when it makes sense. Yeah. But there's been people like people I worked with before I got on Moulin Rouge. I got Moulin Rouge, and I'm a very loyal person. I went back and I said, hey, I'm going to be working on Moulin Rouge. Do you want to do this with me? And they said no. And I said, okay, then I'm going to just go move on and work on it. So, if that's from like a producing perspective, when you're talking about directors and writers, I think, you work with the people who's appropriate for the piece. You know what I mean? You want to work with the people who are best to serve that story.
Well, Cady has a go-to writer. I think her name is Cady.
Yeah, I can't. Again, these women have much more experience in actually producing live theater than I do. You've lost me. Did I get lost?
No, you're here.
way.
You're here. We have you.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's all about collaboration. Sometimes it's with women, sometimes it's with men. I can't speak to the gender thing. I have 2 older brothers who I trust with my life. So I think there's good people and not so good people. And I try to work with the good people, and there are definitely people I repeat things with and people I don't.
Paige, do you want to complete the conversation here?
Every project for me is a completely different beast, and I have people that I trust that, but I think I'm too new in the commercial world to state anything unequivocally, other than I want to work with as many people, and I want to have fun, and I want people that respect each other. And about 10 years ago, I sort of identified what attracted me to doing things, and it was like people and projects that energize me. When they feed me in some way that energizes me and makes me want to pour out all of my heart and soul, that is the indicator. I'm very much a by the gut person, and when I recognize that something is just sucking things out of me and it's a one-way process, I get out. So that's how I choose the people that I surround myself with too. I want a positive exchange of energy and expertise and respect and fun. Life's short.
Yeah, I always say the theater can be play or it can be drama. So theater as play, I think, is what we'd like to emphasize if possible. Are there many more questions?
There are so many questions.
Okay, keep going.
Denise Price asks,
and Cady, if you have to leave, it's fine. Just do when you leave when you need to.
Denise Pence asks, how does one become lead producer? Does it require money or creative control? Are there rules for that sort of thing?
There are no rules. In theater, there are no rules about anything. Does anybody want to take that? Because there are some answers to that. Okay, it's not really lead producer that I like to think about. I'd like to think about creative producers. There are creative producers, and what that takes is vision. That takes coming up with an idea and finding the people to fulfill that idea for you. Lead producers, of course, need to be raising the money, and they're going to be the general partners. I mean, the limited partners. I always get confused. No, the general partners. I always get the two confused in my head. So to some extent, it does take money to be eventually be a lead producer, but you can be a lead producer in developing a new work, and you don't necessarily need to have the money. Anybody want to add to that? Please.
Yeah, also, as a lead producer, if you're somebody who finds a piece, you might option the piece. Do you know what I mean? If a piece goes to a nonprofit like Paige's institution, they have their own process. Paige can probably speak to that much better than I could. So
I hopefully let's move on because there's so many other questions. But if you want to email me, I'll try to find more answers for you. That was from Denise, right?
Yes.
Denise Pence. Okay, Denise, if you need more clarification, email me and I'll have a conversation with my friends here and maybe come up with some more answers for you. Next
question, also from Denise. Would Equity put up roadblocks for Cady's idea? Filming anything has never been easy. I always lobbied to get showcases or indie performances for the actor done. Blocked always.
You could do anything with money. It just takes money.
I'm not talking about just shooting a random high school performance of, whatever. These are produced films that originally were theater pieces. It can be that, there would be a category for a one-shot deal theater, but even I have a couple of beautiful versions of the Will Rogers Follies and the Nance were both shot for television, and they're gorgeous. So there is a chance for live theater, but I'm talking accommodation, not having to pay, not just shooting a theater piece, making a film of a theater piece.
And Paige, just so you know that we're doing our benefit on the SAG-AFTRA micro budget agreement, and that's something that I find extremely convenient and very easy to work with right now. I know that Equity is working on developing other kinds of agreements. I'm not sure where they are right now. And Paige, if you're if you have the ear of anybody at Equity, let them know that I would really love to have a conversation and find out where we are with the different agreements now.
It's really tough. It's really tough. You know, when I was in Philly during the pandemic, and I couldn't get anything happening with Equity. They couldn't pivot fast enough. They have an 82-member board, and it's just the bureaucracy. And it you know, unions should shift quick, not quick, should take their time to it's a slow moving process. So the pandemic exposed a weakness in that kind of structure. But so I used a SAG contract, and much to the dismay of my former colleagues there, you know, but they couldn't. I tried to replace a show by putting a show on Zoom for 3 weeks and rehearsing at all the Equity rates and paying the actors and getting them their health weeks. And then I wanted to do a one-night theater authority benefit of the show on Zoom for free, and they said no. I said, why would you do that? It's just 3 extra work, you know. So we went to SAG, and you know, SAG was not hovering looking to make all that money
Right.
from the theater gigs. So I do think that I do hope, I have hope that they have seen things in a way that and even if it's just because of the competition, that makes them look at it differently. It's just going to take a long time.
Yeah, well, the 3 years have been very difficult for most producers that I know in trying to find a way to come to an agreement with Equity. And SAG has come through actually with things that have made a lot of sense and made things possible for a lot of us. So next question, Owen.
Next question from Donald Loftus. It was mentioned that it is helpful to have co-producers with different strengths. If you could put together a co-producer dream team, what individual strengths would you want the individual team members to have?
Boy, he asks better questions than I do. That's a good one. So there's a pause as everybody's thinking this one through. Stephanie, you got an answer yet?
Yeah, I mean, I'd want somebody who has a lot of connections to PR. I'd want
I was going to
somebody
say
like
marketing and PR.
yeah, marketing and PR for sure, but like, you know, I'd still probably pay for marketing, but it never hurts to have an extra PR person around. So somebody, if your PR team isn't getting through on a certain level, can maybe open up some other opportunities. I'd want some people who have like specialties in relationship to the show. Like, for example, when I was working on Anastasia, we were really lucky that one of the co-producers had a relationship with ancestry.com, and we had a whole campaign with ancestry.com, which was like apropos for Anastasia. I can't so things like that, things that are appropriate for the production. People who are willing to reach out in other ways. If there's somebody who like specializes in groups, somebody who specializes in travel to get groups in from all over the world, that would be fantastic. So that we're not paying extra for that, but people who are actually like have a vested interest individually. Those are just off the top of my head, some broader categories, but yeah. Oh, it'd be so great if I could sit down and be like, here, I want all of these people. Yeah.
Hypothetically, and as Cady has indicated and everybody's indicated, you want, if you're going to be an effective producer, you want to understand all the departments that are working for you. But it certainly helps if you have people that know a little bit more about certain areas than you do. So basically, Donald, the answer to that question is whoever has expertise in areas that I'm not as well versed in. That's part of what you want on your team. Paige, do you have any other kind of response to that? Okay. And are we up to the last question now?
No, not by a long shot.
Oh dear. Okay, keep going.
Sherry Friedman asks, Max Bialystock said, never use your own money. Do you agree?
I guess I'd have to say no, because I do use my own money.
Same.
So I guess I'd have to say no, but I would say that you know, you use your own money with a plan. I think you just don't you don't plan on like assuming you have money to use and lose. Yeah, I mean, I saw that, Michael. If I'm putting my own money into something, I'm looking at it as an investment. I often don't have the liquidity at the moment to put in for the bigger productions that I work on, but I make sure I have the liquidity to do the developmental steps that I'm looking to get so that I can then raise money to get to the next level. So I'm not putting in like $100,000. Do you know what I mean? But like I'm doing what needs to be done so I can get to the point where I can raise money for that production. And that takes time and vision.
The
And
other thing that I think that should be mentioned is that most producers that I know put some money into it before they ask other people to put money into a show that they're working on. It basically shows that you have. It's good to show that you have skin in the game, and I think it's a fair way to approach things. There are producers who do not put any money in; they just strictly raise the money. Paige, have you thought about how you would approach that?
Very similar. I don't have a lot of money to burn, and so my investment is more in time and resources and personal relationships. But there have been times when especially when it's smaller levels and it's, about throwing some money to an artist and commissioning, and I'm much happier putting my money in those buckets.
yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna just keep going on. I think we can only do one or two more questions.
Yeah, I think there's actually only 2 more questions.
Okay,
Maureen, who I think is gone now, but asked if the speakers would be willing to put their email addresses in the chat.
I did earlier. If you need me to redo it, I'll do it. I put in my email address, my Insta, and my TikTok. Yes, I am on TikTok. They are old TikToks from the pandemic, but I am still there. So
no. And if not, you can, if you will have a question for somebody that's a speaker or a guest on my show, you can always email me and I can actually forward a question to them or I can ask them if you can contact them. I'm very protective of producers. We have the same thing with Speed Date, the writer producer Speed Date. I ask that you let me be the point of contact if possible. Last question.
Last question from Rusty. For Paige or all, would you look at projects developed through nonprofits for commercial production?
Well, there you go. That's a yes.
If the question is, do we go to nonprofit productions to see? I have to usually be asked because you don't want to just go. I go to theater all the time, and as a nonprofit person, it was always great to have somebody pitch me something. I wasn't one of the people that budgeted for enhancement money in my budget because that is dangerous. But yeah, I think that partnership is, it could be a mixed bag. So I feel very blessed that I spent 15 years in the nonprofit world, and I know a lot of those people very, very well, and I know what their organizations can do and should do. I wouldn't, so absolutely, I think that is I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan with managed expectations.
Okay, well, I'm going to finally let you go. Does anybody want to have dinner? So
I'm going to rehearsal. I have a pickup rehearsal for the Easter Bunny House.
That's right. Oh, that's right. You have to run to rehearsal. So I want to
I
thank.
go to Manhattan Theater Club.
I want to thank Stephanie. I want to thank Paige and Cady who had to leave a couple minutes ago. So to everybody out there in YouTube and podcast land, if you want to be in the room and you want to actually ask questions and be part of the conversation, please email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com. I'd be happy to put you on our Zoom list, and we'll invite you to come week after week and be part of this, be part of the community. Happy to have you. We also do this as a sort of as a community service of sorts, but we have bills. So everybody's welcome here. I never turn anybody away who doesn't pay. However, we are on a pay what you can thing. So if you can pay something, please do, because we do have expenses, and it's going to get a lot more expensive now that we're going back to live. Suddenly I'm going to have costs for venues and all sorts of things that haven't been my costs and my expenses for the 3 years that we've been on Zoom and in shutdown. So thank you all for being here, for being part of the community, and join us every week. I've got a lot of interesting people coming up. I've got a couple of public theaters that we're going to talk about what a public theater is. Jim Franchione at Great Barrington Public and Raymond Bobgan at the Cleveland Public Theater. We're going to talk about that. I've got Tuesday night. This is not a community gathering, but we're going to do a town hall with 6 very prominent female producers. So maybe you'd like to join us for that. In general, you can find us on TRU Online, truonline.org. That's truonline.org. And you can see what we're up to and what we're doing. And if you want to donate, which I would be mighty, mighty pleased if you did, it's TRU Donate, trudonate.com. That's the short version of the URL. It's trudonate.com. So again, thank you for being with us. Thank you, Paige. Thank you, Stephanie.